Fargo. We build basically pharmaceutical equipment and machinery for a lot of the different large pharmaceutical manufacturers. Right now we have 4 facilities here in Fargo area. We're going to be condensing down to 1. And the next year we're in the process of building out the new building currently. Formerly worked at Amazon with Sarah and a few other people in the room. Fortunately, we were able to get out. But at Grateful, it gave us a lot of good experience. Spent about a little over 4 years there total. Corporate Pharma, I am the very first safety person they've had, so got my work cut out for me there. I'm building our plans and getting them up to speed.
I feel like we should give you a round of applause for that, the first safety manager. So, yeah. All right, well, welcome and thank you. If anybody knows of any colleagues that would be a good candidate for membership for NRASP, please reach out to Chris. He's our membership director, or any of the other board members. We can answer questions as well. But we're putting a push towards bringing additional members into the organization. So if you know of anybody that would benefit from this, please invite them. We'd like to grow the membership so this can be even stronger, and we can be bringing even more great presentations like we're going to have today. So, all right. December 9th is the NRASP annual conference that will be here at the Holiday Inn. Melissa, is there anything you want to say about that? Or? Yeah, I waited until
I just want to thank everybody that's already registered. It's wonderful to get our numbers early until Holiday Inn, of course, for our food counts. So keep registering, keep reminding your team. Wonderful lineup for vendors. It's the most we've ever had. I think we're at 26. Again, thank everybody that's already registered. Get the word out, and we'll be ready to go on tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. So for the monthly meetings, we've been talking about this the last few months, and we've seen an increase in early registration for that. We appreciate that because it helps us gauge the room size, the amount of food that we need, so we minimize the having to set up additional tables or wasting food or not having enough. So if you know you're going to be able to attend the monthly meeting, just please register when you can early so that we have those numbers for planning. Same thing goes with the conference too. If you haven't registered yet, please do so. Same scenario there. We have food obligations and space obligations that we need to plan for, so keep that in mind. Good. As I said, we're increasing our membership, and the plan is for growth, and it's part of our strategic plan. And with growth comes the need for additional technology. We outgrew the Wild Apricot software that we were using previously. We are still using it currently, but we will be switching over to a new software package for membership management that includes a new website. Website's going to look fantastic. Updated all of that. We will be going live with that probably right after the conference.
Right after the December meeting.
Yeah.
So you won't be able to register for January events forward until we push that out. So if you are planning, mark on your calendar for the future events, but you won't be able to register them until we go live after the next December safety monthly meeting.
Yeah. So the new program is called Association Sphere, and Wild Apricot couldn't handle the numbers that we had with all of the registrations for conference as the conference grows. So we were maxed out at what we could utilize that software for. So Association Sphere allows us additional growth at relatively the same cost. It's a little bit different, but the benefits far outweigh what the additional cost is. So watch for that. Upcoming events. In December, our speaker will be Robin Litke-Saul from the city of Fargo talking about Narcan use. January, we'll have Joe Schomer from RISA Power talking about Arc Flash. February, we'll have Robin Ilemny from WSI talking about ladder safety. And then in March, it'll be Ty Gensrich from Hyperion Protection, talking about site security planning. So we've got some good sessions coming up. On your tables, you'll see the QR code. If you get a chance, snap that QR code, take the survey. Let us know what you want to see. This is your organization. We want to be bringing you as a board. We want to bring you the information that you want to get out of these meetings. And that's a great way to give us the feedback that we need to make plans for these type of meetings, is by that survey. We'll talk about the room and the food. We need any feedback that we can get so that we can continue to bring you these quality meetings and these good venues. So there also will be an email sent after the fact for the meeting, so if you don't get to snap the QR code, you'll be able to do that through the email as well. Social medias, we're on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. Go out, like and share, comment. We've had some tremendous growth in LinkedIn recently, and so by expanding our social media, that just gets our message out a little bit more, and that will, again, yield more members and more people know about this organization and the good things that we do. So, all right, with that, talk about our speaker. So, Alicia Fabel is the Dakotas Program Manager for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, whose mission is to save lives and bring hope to those affected by suicide. As an educator and passionate mental health advocate, Alicia works across communities in North Dakota, South Dakota to promote education for suicide prevention and for loss and healing. She's dedicated to creating spaces where open conversations about mental health can thrive. I don't think there's anybody in this room that has not been affected by suicide. I've had several of my friends, colleagues, affected. I've been affected by it as well, so looking forward to the message that you have to share with us and some of the things that we can do to help reach out to those individuals that may be hurting and don't realize it. So with that, I will turn the microphone over to you, and let's give her a big welcome.
Maybe, because I might throw it if I don't put that on accidentally. And then to be able to move my PowerPoint. I think it's not working. That's fine. Okay. No, that's okay. This just There, we're good. Hi, so I'm Alicia. Like was said, I work with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Before that, I was a high school teacher, and so I really love education. My family moved to this area, to the Fargo area, about a year and a half ago, and when we moved, my husband was recruited with his work to advance in his career. And so we ended up here, and I was looking at whether to go back into a classroom, and had an opportunity to move into education with AFSP, which was something that I didn't know that I could do, but I really loved, because I'm somebody who grew up who struggled a lot. I have my own path and history with suicidality and struggling with suicidal thinking and dangerous behaviors that led back to a lot of mental health, not understanding my mental health. I grew up in a family of career military people. We moved around a lot. By the time I was 14, we were in our sixth or seventh state, right? Sixth school district, all that sort of thing. And so at that time, decades ago, in the military, like with some other industries, like our medical industries, things like that, talking about mental health was not something that my dad could do. He couldn't talk to a mental health professional for his bipolar disorder that went undiagnosed until he retired. He couldn't get those sorts of supports without losing his active duty status, without impacting our family. And so we didn't talk about mental health. It was something that you just kept quiet and you talked through. And so I did not learn how to take care of the things that I struggled with, my anxiety disorder, my panic attack disorders, things like that. And so by the time I got through college, and was a young mom, my passive suicidal thinking had become active suicidal thinking and behaviors. And that was, I had 4 little kids, and my last crisis, a couple of my older 2 were watching a TV show and a couple were napping. And I went through my final crisis, and that was what it finally took for me to say, this isn't okay, I've got to tell somebody. My husband had no idea, my family had no idea that I had struggled with those sorts of things, because we didn't talk about it. We didn't want to be a burden, we didn't want to be ungrateful for the life we had. And so when I finally realized that this was something that was impacting the safety of my kids, was what it finally took for me to talk to my husband and to be able to start that mental health journey and learning about how my brain works. And so here I am today, being able to, I get to go into schools and talk about mental health. And I like to be in the classroom, obviously. I get to talk to organizations, we talk to doctors, right? And it wasn't that long ago that our board president in the area is mostly retired. She says she's retired, but she still works a lot. That she was an internalist and her husband died by suicide as a pediatrician. And at that time, she's worked a lot to be able to get policymakers so that a doctor could say, yes, I have seen a therapist, but it's managed and I'm okay, and keep being a doctor and wouldn't lose their licensing. And so we're seeing those trends. We're seeing it in military and across a lot of places. And it's great to see that, because, like I said, a lot of us have been, most of us, I would say most of us have been affected, or we know somebody close to has been affected by suicide or suicide thoughts. So I'm going to talk, I know that you work with a lot of different industries, not all construction, and this says all construction, but I'm going to relate it to a lot of industries that I know you're connected to as well. But we do know that suicide is higher in construction, that it affects a lot of our people in those industries. So that's why we have this. Sorry, the computer's not liking me. I got it. There we go. For some reason, it just wants to keep pulling up my thing and blocking, and I can't see what you guys are saying. But before I get started with that, I do want to, I'm going to talk about suicide prevention. We're going to talk through risk factors and things like that. That could be a heavy topic. If you are somebody who has been affected by suicide, especially, or struggles with mental health, or know somebody, talking about it, listening to this can bring up a lot of active thoughts, a lot of heavy things, right? And so if you need to take a step aside, you need to take a step into the hall, take a walk, get a drink, go to the restroom, right? Please do those things and take care of you. That's my number one, is that you'll be okay. If we leave here and this does bring up a lot of thoughts, a lot of personal experiences, please make sure that you are talking to someone, that you are connecting and doing those extra self-care things to build resilience to, okay? So do make sure that you take care of yourself. I will talk about mental health options and how to connect to extra resources. And I understand that in your industry you have a lot of those connections too. Please use them, okay? As we are encouraging the people that you are serving in your industry to use those things, one of the best things we can do is to use them ourselves, and to show that it is okay, because it is. This presentation, it is for general audiences. This is a disclaimer I have to give for legal purposes, of course, and it's for general audiences. It is not a replacement for mental health services, and so I will talk about that, and if you need, or know somebody who needs to connect to those resources. I'm not presenting as a mental health professional today, or as an expert, right? I'm presenting because this is a peer presentation, but I am happy to help connect anyone to resources after it's needed. And if you're not familiar with AFSP, or American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, the mission for AFSP, like was said, is to save lives and bring hope to those affected by suicide. We work in a lot of different strategies to do that. Research, we're the world's leading private funder of suicide prevention research. We work through education, things like this in the schools. We do a lot of advocacy statewide, national, for suicide prevention methods. And if you're ever interested in getting involved in those sorts of things, I would be happy to talk to you too. If you're wanting to get involved in advocacy or anything like that, or you can learn more, I'll talk about AFSP forever if I want. This particular program was developed as part of the Hard Hat Courage initiative, and there's little cards on your table that have more information. has a QR code that'll take you to it. There's just free resources that you can use. There are extra things like toolbox topics, and it's all laid out. Now we do a lot of research and a lot of tracking, and so I think you do have to put your name and email in there, just because that's the only time we're going to be able to see how many of these are downloaded. But it's free, and then there are a bunch of other resources as well. But we did partner with the construction industry, partners like Bechtel, and that helped to develop these resources as well as this program. All right, so what I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to go through the impact of suicide in the construction industry. I'm also going to relate to some other industries that I know that you are active in supporting. We're going to talk through being able to recognize some of those warning signs, how to approach someone who is struggling in a safe and effective way, and also make sure that you are aware of some of those resources that you can send people to if you're concerned about them. So when we talk about the scope, about 50,000, almost 50,000 people in the United States die by suicide every year. It is a far-reaching problem. I know we're in North Dakota. I know some of you work in Minnesota, but I'll stick with North Dakota numbers. In North Dakota, 5 times more people die by suicide than alcohol-related car accidents every year. We know that this is something, it's the second leading cause of death in North Dakota for ages 10 to 34. And so this is something that generally does affect a lot of our populations, and it affects for a long time because mental health struggles, grief, loss, the unique loss of suicide are far-reaching concerns. When we start to talk about the construction industry, so let me, I'll throw out some more numbers because I'm a nerd and I like numbers. I did teach middle school math for a little bit until I realized that middle schoolers were not my cup of tea, and I moved to high school, but which is where I was meant to be. So national averages for suicide loss, about 14 people, 14 per 100,000 population die every year by suicide. When we start, because I know some of you might work in the ag-related industries, right? So farming, ranching, fisheries, all of those sorts of things, we start around 46 to 48 per 100,000. Transportation, warehousing, manufacturing, around 52 per 100,000. Construction's around 56 per 100,000. Oil, gas extraction, coal, mining, all of that is around 72 per 100,000. And some of those are our biggest industries. And we have a lot of those industries in our region. And so we do know that this is something that really affects a lot of our industry workers and safety. And since you are in, promoting safety in the construction industry in particular, we know that every day we lose 14 or 15 construction workers on average to preventable death. About 3 are to accidents and the rest are to suicide. And so that's every day. It is a big impact. So that makes up about 12% of total suicide loss in the United States every day. And so this also shows some of our other industries. Construction is here. Mining, oil, gas extraction is higher. Arts and entertainment. I forgot about our arts and entertainment industry, but that as well. So our musicians, our athletes, all of that industry, agriculture, transportation. That orange line is the national average across all working class people or all workers, active employees, because that level is a little higher than the national average too in general. But so all of these industries are a little bit higher. And we're going to talk about some of the reasons why, because that's part of how we prevent suicide, is understanding the whys. So when we talk about suicide, yes, it can be prevented because this is something that a lot of people, I don't think, understand. And if you think about our health and some of the issues that come about because of maintaining health, mental health is the same. We can take care of mental health. We can prevent things. We can prevent mental health struggles from turning into the level of stress that leads to suicide. We can also intervene when we recognize it, that means being educated, which I appreciate you letting me be here to talk about this. I have had people approach me before and say, you know, you can't talk about suicide like it's preventable. It's not. But the thing is, research and studies have shown us that it is in fact preventable. And sometimes we can do all that we can, right, and we're still not going to be able to save someone. But in general, suicide is preventable, just like other conditions in health and mental health. So when I'm going to talk about how we prevent suicide, we really try to think about suicide in different levels, right? We look at upstream prevention. What do we do before someone's even struggling with suicidality? What can we do? And then we look at like that mid-level prevention, which is, you know, somebody is struggling right now, what do we do? And then we do post-vention, which is after somebody has lost a loved one or friends to suicide, or they have survived an attempt. What do we do? And so we have those 4 levels. I'm going to start off by talking more about that upstream level of what do we do to prevent suicide before somebody may even be struggling. And one of the important things is talking about suicide, being able to share stories and to talk safely about suicide. And to get people to talk about suicide, we have to minimize or break down some of those stigmas that have been around for decades and for always, right? And so how we talk about suicide matters. And so in specific ways, when we talk about someone who dies by suicide, we want to, in our language, and this is going to take time. We've said these phrases for like our whole lives, a lot of us. But they do encourage stigmas around talking about suicide. So if we can start avoiding the phrase committed suicide in our language, we know that this helps to increase conversations. First of all, it's inaccurate. Research tells us that suicide is a complex health issue, right? And when we're talking about a health issue, because our brain is a physical organ, right? People don't commit a heart attack. And so we wouldn't say that they committed suicide either because it's a mental health distress. It's their brain that's not processing in a healthy way. And so it's inaccurate. It also has negative connotations because people commit a crime. And so if we talk about it in a way where it seems like a crime, then people don't talk about it. And so we bottle up, which we know it's not helpful for prevention. So when we talk about someone who dies by suicide, they died by suicide. They ended their life. It was a suicide death. Those are accurate and non-stigmatizing ways to talk about it. When we talk about a suicide attempt, a lot of times we hear failed and successful. These are also inaccurate ways to think about suicide, because a failed attempt is when someone lives and that's not a failing and they're not a failure, right? And a lot of the people who are struggling are already dealing with those feelings, and it's not a success when they end their life. And so we want to do that. It's also just not necessary, because someone has either attempted and they're an attempt survivor, or they died by suicide. We don't need failures successful in that language, because there's really 2 options. They attempted and survived, or they died by suicide. And so thinking about it that way. Now, some other things, talking about stories makes it feel normalized, right? If other people have experienced this too, it's not a shameful thing. I can talk about it. I can get help. I can do these things. And so speaking our stories is really important. When we talk about suicide, we do want to make sure we understand that there is a level of contagion that is involved with suicide, which means that and we see this usually, somebody who loses a loved one to suicide and who is struggling, they are at increased risk of suicide themselves. And so we do a lot of post-vention and making sure that somebody who's affected by suicide has the right supports and things in place to what they need, protective factors in place. And so one of the things that we need to be careful of is that when we are talking about suicide, sharing stories, that we avoid graphic details, and we avoid focusing on especially graphic details around methods, how somebody ended their life, and because those are the things that we know through research do actually increase the risk of death of close loved ones who may be also struggling after a loss. And so making sure that we are focusing on the person, on the hopeful things, on how we heal, on how we learn and move forward is really important. We also, when we talk about suicide, want to make sure that we aren't minimizing suicide. And I'll talk about this a lot, but it is boiling suicide down to like one reason or cause. This person died because they went through a bad divorce, right? And we don't want to do that because suicide doesn't work that way. There's not a single cause of suicide. It is a complex issue. And understanding that is really, really important and hopeful, actually. Because if suicide is caused by one thing, we only have one way to intervene, which is not an okay situation to be in. And the fact that it's not that case is really a hopeful thing for me, because we have a lot of places to intervene. And so I am going to spend some time looking at risk factors for suicide, ones that in the construction industry, and these are similar to some of the same risk factors that we know that are in manufacturing, warehousing, transportation, those sorts of industries as well. And the reason that I really appreciate learning about risk factors is because if I understand risk factors, then I know what I can do to help counter some of those. And so when we talk about upstream prevention, risk factors and protective factors are part of that step, understanding what affects people, and then how do we help to counter some of those risk factors. And for those of you who have worked in HR or those sorts of things, you're familiar with a lot of these, and so I'm going to be, I talk through risk factors, and you're like, yeah, I remember them. We need to hear these all the time. I present about risk factors in almost every program and every presentation that I give, and I still regularly will be presenting on this and go, oh, I need to check in with, whoever that is, because something occurs to me, right? And so hearing some of this information again is really good for our brains to be mindful and connected with the people we care about. So risk factors, those are the things that make someone more vulnerable to suicide over time. Changes in mental health, substance use, past traumas, things like that are kind of listed up here. They don't cause suicide on their own, but they can add up and contribute to someone's overall risk. And so there are some, like mental health. We talk about mental health a lot. And understanding that mental health is more than just feelings, right? And feelings are a part of mental health. But it's overall psychological processing, resilience. Do I feel like, yes, I can do this? It's hard right now, but I'm going to be okay. Like, do I feel like that, or am I struggling with that? Social well-being, connections. And so all of that is part of our mental health. And we do know that mental health conditions like depression, anxiety, those sorts of things can impact and do impact our overall feelings of well-being and relationships. And research shows us that most people who die by suicide do have a mental health condition at the time of their death. About 90% of people who die by suicide do. And so that's why we focus a lot on mental health and mental health awareness and education and help seeking. But I do want to make sure that we're really clear that mental health isn't the only story. It's just one risk factor. And so about 1 in 4 of us will have a mental health condition at some point in our lives. That's current statistics. About 25 to 30% of us will have a mental health condition. And those are, not just a bad day, bad week. That's anxiety, depression, PTSD, all of those things. And so that's a lot of this. It makes it a pretty natural part of being human. And so that's why we want to encourage people to learn about their brain by connecting with professional mental health, right, and education. But most of us will not go on to die by suicide. Most people with a mental health condition will not even consider or think about suicide. And so mental health is not the only factor, but it is an important one that we want to make sure that we are aware of, and it's one of those upstream things that we can do. Now, in the construction industry, along with all the other industries I keep bringing up, some more risk factors that we know, because everyone has the same, are vulnerable to the same risk factors, right, as the general population. Construction workers, they have the same general population risk factors. Warehousing, production, they all, right? But then there are additional ones in different populations. And so for our construction industry in particular, we know that there is, and if you work with construction, you know this too, there is this culture of being brave, being tough, being stoic, being self-sufficient, not needing to ask for help, I can do it, right? And I grew up with a military dad, and it was the same there too. And so that does add to the risk for that population. Chronic physical pain, any industry where somebody is at more risk of having it because of the type of work, having chronic pain, becoming injured all of those things, pain, chronic pain especially, is an important risk factor because living in pain is hard to do. And when somebody is injured a lot or they're in a lot of pain, they're more likely to be on prescription medications. And so now they have access in larger populations or larger percentages to prescription medications that can also be a method or lead to reduction in pulse control and things like that. In construction and other industries, we see cyclical work periods, times where they are laid off and they're not sure about their employment. They are isolated, they're not connected, and maybe to deal with that, we see substance use increasing or things like that. And there's financial stress, all of those things. Longer work hours or nighttime work hours, weekend work hours. I am in a brand new neighborhood. Last time this year, we were like the only house in a huge field, and now there's a bunch of houses around us, but we were the only house out there. And they are out there working at 7 o'clock on the dot, which must be our community's noise releases at 7 a.m. Is that it? Because at 7 a.m. they're out there. And they're out there all weekend long and into the night until it's dark, and a lot of times even inside the shells of the houses, right? The lights are on, someone's in there working, doing drywalling and painting and all the things. And so some of those hours and inconsistencies contribute to risk as well. Sleeping issues, of course, is a big one. And then in some of these industries, they just have greater access to dangerous situations like high buildings and bridges or equipment or things like that. So those are some risk factors that add additional risk in these industries. Now, protective factors are the things that help to protect or mitigate against some of those risk factors. Because I like numbers, I will say recent studies have shown that somebody who dies by suicide has about 7 to 10 risk factors at the time of their death. And so if we're starting to recognize a lot of risk factors in the people that we're working with, definitely want to start making sure that we are adding some protective factors and supports. Because, of course, this is something that we can do. And I'm somebody that I want to know what can I do. Oh, I forgot that's here and it's not here. What can I do? Right? I want to be able to be active and do something. And so protective factors is one thing that we can do. We can add them. We can promote them and advocate for them. And protective factors, the common ones are things like fostering communication, having good communication. And so as a teacher, it was I had a candy bowl on my desk that had the little cheap candies in it because it would get the kids that otherwise would never come and talk to me to come grab a candy and I could talk to them. And they would start to normalize that I wasn't scary, right? And so things like that, a sense of belonging and connection. And if we are talking about people who work alone a lot of times, or they're in a different gang or crew, my brother works for the railroad, right? And so he's with a different gang every couple of days. And so maybe the people that would know that he was struggling now have no idea, and he's isolated, nobody there to check on him, make sure he's okay, because they have no idea, they don't really know him. And so not having that consistent check-in. And so if we can be aware of some of those oversights with our people, peer support is really important. If we can model hey, yeah, I'm talking to a therapist, I'm learning about this, I've got my counseling appointments, right? And really have those conversations and normalize them. And I think that that's something that even our youth, and I always get a question about this, right? And I'm talking to the youth and they're like, so do you see a therapist? And I'm like, I do. And my therapist sees a therapist because if she didn't, she's not okay and she couldn't help me, right? Because that's how mental health works. We can't help somebody else if we're not taking care of us. And so if you're in a role where you're trying to support people who are struggling and you're not taking care of you and seeing somebody to help take care of you and teach you how to take care of you, you're probably not as okay as you need to be either. So yes, if I'm taking care of somebody, I'm taking care of me. And if I'm working in an industry where I'm talking to survivors and lost survivors and things like that, then yes, I'm talking to someone to keep me okay too. And plus all my background, right? And so engaging in mental health care is an important thing. Engaging in physical health care, right? We also see that there's less willingness to just take care of our bodies. Now, I have sat and listened to people in this industry, and they talk about, well, we have all of these things, and they can call these numbers, and there's people that will help them, and there's these, but nobody uses them. Nobody ever calls them, right? And I hear that in colleges too, we have on-campus mental health, and we have all these, but none of the kids come. Because they are nervous and it's new and they have no idea what it is. Yeah, it's there, but they're like, I don't know. And so just like I would encourage at, so when I'm talking to colleges, I'm like, when you're bringing the students in, make them go in and say hi to the mental health place. They have to walk in. This is what it looks like. Here's who's going to sit there. This is what you do. You talk to her. You do this, right? And so when you have new employees or you're doing reviews, having them call those numbers, introduce themselves, talk to the people on the other line, ask some questions. Now they've gotten over that step of, I don't know that, right? And so anytime that we can reduce those barriers of unknowing and encourage help seeking is really, really important. Doing that with them, I did talk to my husband. I shared, right? I finally had to that night admit to my husband that I struggled with suicidality, not wanting to be around it and doing things that put me in danger. And it still took me a little bit to get connected with a mental health provider because I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how do you do that? You just like call up and say, hey, I need to be seen. Like, what, I don't know, right? Had no idea. And so I just kept going on, but I was honest with him, which helped. I was at a doctor's appointment, and routine doctor's appointment, and they said something, or asked me a question, I don't even remember what it was, but apparently the way I answered, this particular doctor caught something and kept talking to me and said, oh, tell me more about this, and got some more out of me and got me talking, right? And so by the time, a 15-minute conversation, she understood that I was not okay. And she didn't just say, you need to contact a therapist. Do that, right? She said, okay, we're going to pick out a therapist for you, right? She pulled it up on Google. Here's the ones close to your home. These ones take your insurance. Pulled up the pictures of the people with the thing and said, I think that she might be a good match for you. Do you like this? Let's call and make an appointment. I left that doctor's appointment with an appointment. She had helped me match with a mental health professional, helped me make that call. If she had said, go home and do that, I would have been like, sure. And I probably wouldn't have done it, right? And so doing some of that, even though it feels like hand-holding, but being vulnerable to say, hey, I need help, and to actually take the steps to get help is hard for a lot of us who have had to or feel like we need to be self-sufficient and tough and strong. And so I'm grateful for that she recognized that I needed somebody to give me that extra step. So make those calls with your people. Do them with them and introduce them to these opportunities. And that's some great ways to build protective things, protective factors. Now, when we are talking about someone who is thinking about suicide, right? So those are all kind of like those upstream things that contribute to suicide. We know that if somebody has a lot of those risk factors and not a lot of protective factors, that if they then go through a period of crisis, those tough situations in life that we usually point to and say that caused suicide, without realizing all the things that have been going on before, and then they go through this time and it feels unsolvable. It feels like that it's not going to end. There are cognitive changes that happen for people that enter those crisis periods, okay? And so we hear a lot like, why couldn't they think about all the things they have to live for, all the people they would hurt? They literally can't. That's not how the brain works. When you hit a crisis moment, somebody who struggles with suicidality, we call it tunnel vision. They have cognitive constriction. And it does feel like this tunnel vision where, all those things of why I have the liver out here and all that I can see is my only way out is here, and making these choices. And so understanding how the brain works is really important. And so I want to talk more about someone who does struggle or might be struggling, and how do we intervene with them. Because if you've got somebody who cannot foresee a time where this pain, whether it's physical or mental, and both of those are really registering in my brain the same way, right? Physical, mental pain, my brain's just seeing pain. And so if somebody is in feeling that sort of pain, we want to make sure that we are able to give them some other options. Now, someone who gets to this point is going to have mental health is complex. They're going to have their own unique path. Somebody can have a lot of protective factors. Great family, supportive family. I did. Married to my best friend still this day. We've been married 23 years in a couple weeks, right? And he's amazing. And I still struggled, right? And it's because there were other things going on. And so we can have a lot of protective factors and still be at risk. We can have some risk factors that we don't even identify or recognize, right? Things like that happen too. But every person's path to feeling suicidal or attempting suicide is unique. But we do know that people who are suicidal are ambivalent about ending their life, and what that means is they don't want to die. They want to end their pain. And this is a very important distinction when we talk about suicidality. And so, and we know this through research, that is not, they're not obsessed with death or focused on wanting to die, they just want to end the pain. And when we talk some more about how we can communicate with somebody who's struggling, this will play a role in some of that conversation too. But the important thing is that when we talk about that crisis moment, so we have, and you'll hear people that, they planned a suicide over a long period of time, but it's that crisis moment of when they would actually act on their pain, or that was impulsive. People who have suicidal attempts, they're impulsive. It's those crisis moments. Those are brief. In general, 15 seconds to 15 minutes, right? Some can last up to a day. That crisis moment of when somebody would actually act on ending their life, but they are brief and they do pass. For me, in my crisis moments, I can distinctly remember very clearly that feeling of, Alicia, what are you doing? Right? And that opening up, that tunnel vision opened up, and all of a sudden I'm like, there's all these things, right, that I at that time wasn't seeing. And so we know that happens. And so when we talk about how do we protect somebody if they are struggling or entering maybe that crisis time for that to open up. And that a lot of times also means distance from anything legal means, right, to keep them safe during that period of time. So to be able to help somebody with this, we have to do our steps. We're going to watch for warning signs. Somebody who could be struggling, maybe going close to that period of crisis, having conversations, keeping the environment safe, connecting to resources. For warning signs, they usually come in, not usually, they do, they come in 3 categories: talk, behavior, and mood. And I like to tell people, talk, because we want to think about ourselves too, right? Talk can be myself, talk to myself, my thoughts in my head. It could be something vague put out on social media. It can be written somewhere. It can be spoken. All that sort of communication falls in this. And so, of course, anybody who says that they're thinking of hurting themselves or ending their life, we should be having a conversation with them. I remember being in high school, and there was a conversation around suicide, and someone was like, well, no, because if somebody actually said that, they wouldn't mean it, because if they meant it, they wouldn't have told me so that I could stop them, right? This is where that understanding that people who struggle with suicidality don't want to die, they want to end their pain. And so, no, they're talking about it, but they don't. We are wired for survival. We have survival instincts, right? And so if they're talking about it or things like that, that is their brain looking for other options. That is them trying to find another option. And so, no, talking about it is natural. And so if we hear it, we do actually want to make sure that we are responding with caring conversations and not putting that off as, oh, they don't mean it. Because, of course, they don't want to die. That's not how our brains work. Making sure that some big categories, feeling hopeless, helpless, trapped, no one can help me, nothing can make this better, it is what it is, I have to deal with it, it's my lot in life, like all of these sorts of things that actually aren't true. It just means that we haven't gotten the tools yet that we need to work through that. So those sorts of feelings or communications. Feeling like a burden, don't want to bother them, maybe my thing's not that big of a deal, maybe I should be able to handle it on my own, but I'm really not handling it on my own. All of that sort of thing, also thought processes that are unhealthy and not true, because we can learn skills to get through those things. Feeling unbearable pain, of course, right? So any of those sort of conversations, people can joke about it, and maybe I should just step in front of that bus, We should not be joking like that. That means that they're probably struggling with something. We should probably be checking in on them, even if it's said like a joke, or if they're walking it back. And I would even inside my head walk things back. I'd be like, no one would notice if I was gone. Nobody would care. Nobody would miss me. And I'd be like, oh, you should stop it, right? I'd walk it back. And so if somebody's walking it back, that does not take away the seriousness. If someone's saying it like a joke, doesn't minimize the seriousness that their brain is dealing with some tough things. And so we do want to check and make sure that they are connecting and learning those tools and skills with safe help and resources. Behavior, a lot of times, sorry, my screen shows a different one. Behavior. Behavior, changes in behavior are like the big thing that we're looking for, like, hey, this isn't like them, this isn't like me. Time to check in, have those conversations, see what's going on. For sure, changes in sleep patterns, having a hard time falling asleep, staying asleep, sleeping too much. We have research coming out right now that is connecting really specific sleep problems to suicide. And so sleep is one that we want to make sure that we are aware of. Acting recklessly, not caring about my safety, my well-being. I could be like spending recklessly because I don't care anymore. Unsafe behaviors, increases in substance use, not taking care of myself, whether that's hygiene or whatever it is. And so all of those things. Not doing the things that I used to enjoy. And doing, sleeping instead or whatever it is. Another one is looking for ways to kill themselves. And this seems obvious, but what we know is that after someone dies by suicide, too many times when investigations are happening, there are things on computer histories where they are looking for methods and how much of this to take and what to do and how to get prepared, right? And so we do know that somebody looking for support is actually a pretty common behavior as well. Looking to give away possessions or seeming like they're saying goodbye or anything like that. So making sure that we are paying attention. In the end, your gut instinct, if you're like, hey, this isn't like them, check in. Maybe they spilled their breakfast and they're hungry and tired, or maybe they didn't, right? And so it doesn't hurt to check in. And if you are checking in and supporting that, and something is at some point wrong, they're more likely to be able to confide as well and know that they can talk to you. So any changes in behavior. Changes in mood as well. A lot of times people who struggle with suicidality can display these subtly. And so getting, and another behavior one, I'm going to go back to behavior. Isolation. For people who struggle with suicidality, being alone is not a good thing. So how do we balance that with the people that we know that they're my introvert friend and they need time alone to recharge, right? So here's the thing about that. It is recharge time if it makes them feel good. It's self-care if it makes us feel good. If that isolation time is not making someone feel better, it's not recharge time. It's actually unhealthy and not okay. They need to connect. All humans need connection. So make sure that if you've got somebody that's isolating to recharge and it's not making them feel better, they're not recharging, okay? They need to connect and have that somebody checking on them. So mood, any of these tough moods, and that's how I like to think about it, tough moods, right? We're going to feel mad sometimes. We're going to be sad sometimes. We should. Things happen to us. They should affect us. We don't want to be stuck in those moods and not have a way out of them or can't find our way out of them. And so if you are seeing somebody that's having a hard time navigating out of those, or they're having mood swings going from like up to not okay really quick, or the opposite way, not okay to feeling really bubbly. And so with that, I just want to point out that we do know that sometimes somebody who has struggled with like depression and has not been okay, if they have made a plan, they feel like the weight has come off and they might actually seem happier. Or people who struggle, right? So we hear like people who struggle and they're at their bottom. A lot of times when they're down there, they can't even like barely brush their teeth or take showers, let alone act on any plans, but they can plan. And then when they start to feel better and they have the energy to act on those plans because they don't want to ever be back there again, this is a period of actual concern, is when somebody is starting to feel better. So I think a lot of times that we forget that. So changes in mood, you seem happier. Are you happier? Why? What's making you happier, right? Some of those conversations can be important. It never hurts to have a conversation. Now, when we are having, like, if you have any instinct at all that, hey, maybe I should just check in, do it. Don't wait for somebody else to do it. Don't second guess yourself. I don't know why, and I'm guilty of this too. And I'm like, what if I check in and they're okay and I like offend them? Nobody has ever checked in with me and I'm like, oh no, I'm fine, and been offended because they cared, right? But for some reason we do that. Don't. Check in, it can save lives. So make sure that you're doing that. Trust your gut. Having conversations can be hard, can be awkward if we're not used to talking about feelings. We're not used to approaching these conversations. And that is natural. You're not alone if you're struggling to start these conversations. I would just encourage you to push through that awkwardness and to start having these conversations more. That actually makes it easier when we do it more often. And so it is really important that you're trusting your gut. And one thing, so when we're having these conversations, don't minimize feelings. We hear this, we've experienced this all the time, right? Minimizing feelings is saying that you shouldn't feel like that. And we unintentionally, I think, do this, have all done this. And it sounds like this. Hey, you seem upset, what's going on? Well, this just happened, it really made me mad. Don't let that bother you, it's not a big deal, their opinion doesn't matter, you just need to just let it go, don't let it, right? Just let it roll off your shoulders. We've essentially just told that person they shouldn't feel how they feel. But they do feel how they feel, right? And so that can actually shut them down from talking to you. So instead, I care, how can I help? Okay, it's really simple. This just happened, really made me mad. Oh, I'm sorry that happened. That shouldn't have happened to you. You don't deserve that. You know, all of that sort of thing. Do you need to talk about it? You want to not think about it? You want to do something else? You need a hug? What do you need, right? I care, how can I help? Rather than trying to don't feel like that. When we say that, when we say, oh, don't do that, let it go, it's us trying to say, oh, I hate that you feel that way, right? That's essentially what we're trying to say. Say that instead, okay? Say what we mean instead of just trying to tell somebody not to feel how they feel. Anyway, make sure that if we are worried that somebody is maybe narrowing into that crisis moment, right? They are feeling hopeless, they're feeling like there's nothing else. Getting into a debate about all the things they have to live for can actually not be helpful, especially if that person has already decided that this choice would be better for the people around them, and we're saying, and they're like, no, I already know that it's going to be, right? So those debates are not helpful, can actually work in the opposite way of making somebody feel more stressed and more determined. Do not offer advice on how they should fix it. My brother's uncle's cousin did this and it worked for them. Why aren't you doing this? You just need to exercise. You just need to all these things, right? If somebody is nearing that moment of crisis, those things aren't helpful. If you think, you have all these great things to live for, think about a time when you were in terrible, terrible pain. Worst pain of your life, okay? Got it? What if somebody then approaches you and they're like, but think about all the great things coming up. Your birthday's coming up. What kind of cake do you want? Do you want to do this? What do you want to do? Don't worry about your pain. We're going to think about this wonderful party. Are you receptive to that? Probably not, okay? So when somebody is in that moment, trying to tell them you have all these great things is probably not a good time. And what they really need is, think about when you're in physical pain, what do you need? You need reassurance that somebody is going to take care of you. There is a fix. You're going to be okay. You're not going to be like this forever, and it's right. And that's what somebody needs. You're not alone. You're going to be okay. I'm here. You're going to get this taken care of. And so we want to make sure that we are following that as well. All right. So for that conversation, of course, make sure that if we're worried about mental health, private conversations are going to be get better results. I care. This is why I'm worried. How can I help, right? It's still that I care, how can I help phrasing. I care. I've noticed that you've been not being yourself. I've noticed this. You've been more frustrated. What's been going on? Can we talk about it? I'd love to talk to you about that, right? You've been an important friend to me. I wonder what's been happening at home. All of those sorts of things. And then follow that up. If you can get them talking, right? So that's a way to start a conversation. Get them talking. That's probably the hardest part. Once they are talking, get them to keep talking, okay? And so open-ended questions to prompt them to continue talking, like, oh, yeah, I see that's been tough. So how's that been affecting you here? Or I'm sorry that you've been dealing with that. Tell me more about this. Because you're listening for warning signs. You're listening for those things of, are they feeling hopeless, trapped, hurt, and alone, all of those sorts of things. And if you get into these conversations and they didn't just stub a toe or spill breakfast and they're hungry, right? You're like, okay, they are dealing with something. There is some distress here. The most important thing that we can do is ask them directly, are you thinking about suicide? This scares a lot of people. There's a misconception that if I ask about suicide, I might put the idea in their head. If they're already thinking about it, I might push them more towards it. But this is where we go back to, we are wired for survival. We are not wired to want to die. And so no, asking about suicide gives them an option. It gives them another alternative that they're looking for anyway, right? So it's protective. It doesn't push them towards it, okay? That's not how suicide works. It's actually one of the most important safety things that we can do. They even did surveys with kids down to age 9 or 10, and when they were struggling with some mental health distress, asked them, and then went back and said, how did you feel when somebody asked you that? And they all of them said, it made me feel good. It made me feel happier, okay? Because people who are struggling are looking for another option. So make sure that you are asking that hard question. And then respond accordingly. Now, if somebody is like, hey, no, I'm not thinking about suicide, but I am struggling with something, right? We want to make sure that we are connecting with them, getting them to talk to somebody if they're struggling with something, right? Preventative care, connecting to resources, keep following up with them. I've been thinking about you since we talked last time, right? Keep those conversations going. Have you been able to check in with a therapist or talk to somebody? But make sure that you are still promoting that self-care and that help-seeking. If someone does say that they are thinking about suicide, we want to make sure that we are calm as much as we can be because they're already stressed. So stay calm and get some more information. Do you have a plan? Do you have a method? Do you have that method available to you? Are you willing for somebody to take that and hold on to that for you for now? I'm here and I'm going to get some help. If somebody, right, this is not when we start, you have so much to live for, right? Because they're in enough pain that's not helpful. We are going to start, you're not alone. You're not bad for feeling like this. This happens. These feelings just tell us that we need to get connected to somebody to see what's going on, and which is some tools and supports. If somebody has a plan, if they have a method picked out, any of those sorts of things, a timeline, we want to not leave them alone. Remove any lethal means choices. And so we talk about keeping the environment safe, right? And if they've chosen and have access to a lethal means, making sure that that's not accessible to them, escorting them to mental health services, calling 988 with them. If you feel like your safety is at risk at any point, obviously keep yourself safe and call 911 so that we can intervene. This kind of goes back to that, I already kind of mentioned it. Like if somebody isn't thinking about suicide, we still want to connect them to resources. If somebody doesn't have like a laid out plan or anything, it's just like kind of a vague, any thoughts of suicide 100% mean that they need to be assessed professionally for mental health concerns, okay? These are like, think about like an infection. If I know that I have an infection, I'm not just going to let that go. If somebody is having thoughts, no matter how passive about suicide, left unaddressed, untreated, unassessed, we know that these can become dangerous, so they should be encouraged to speak to someone. But if we can, somebody who maybe is not struggling, thanks for sharing that, makes me feel good that you trust me, open up those further conversations. But for somebody who is struggling and we are worried about them, time and distance are life-saving. Time for that intervention and supports that they need, distance from lethal means. And a lot of times there's this misconception too that, well, if they've chosen this method and I take that away, they're just going to choose something else. Actually, studies have shown us that's not true. In general, if you remove a chosen method for suicide, they're unlikely to choose another one. Plus, if their chosen method is like a firearm, which is really effective at ending life, and you remove that and they do choose another one, we have more opportunities to intervene as well. And so we want to make sure that we are keeping the environment safe. Firearms, now I grew up my dad is a firearm safety instructor, a bow hunting instructor, like all of those things, right? I grew up in firearms and he had them out because we were all mature and taught how to handle these and we knew how to, and he didn't know that I struggled and that I looked at his unlocked guns quite frequently as a teenager, okay? So keep them locked up even if you do live in a home by yourself, even if you live with kids that are trained and know how to handle these safely, even if you trust those people, because you don't know what somebody you care about could go through or be going through. So make sure that we are keeping those locked up. I think in this area, 70% of suicide deaths are firearm related. Firearms are unfortunately very effective at ending life, and so we want to make sure that we are practicing safe storage. Think about if somebody does have a firearm and they're struggling, get somebody to babysit it for them, right? A family member that can babysit their firearms, making sure that there are a lock combinations and give somebody else the key. If you can't do that, find other ways. And there was one that somebody told me, they're like, yeah, I put the key in a block of ice And then if I really needed it, I'm gonna let it thaw out. But if I impulsively wanted that key, by the time I chip through the ice, I'm probably like, okay, right? And so I don't know if that's I was like, well, that's another option, right? So anything that we can do to create time between us and lethal means is really important. Medications, cleaning supplies, things like that, chemicals, make sure that we are keeping those locked up and safe, so that there is a step to get through it. Any time. Going through a lock is time, right? Those crisis moments can be seconds. So going through a lock could be enough. And then also making sure that if you're dealing with somebody who is struggling, involve them in what do you need to feel safer. How can we make this environment safer for you? It can be really, really important because again, people who struggle with suicidality don't want to die. And so when they're not in those crisis moments, they can help with some of that to feel safer. And then connect to resources. If you're not familiar with 988, they are the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Most people don't realize that you do not need to be dealing with a suicide issue or a crisis to use this line. Any mental health concern. I've got someone struggling, don't know what to do. I'm struggling, don't know what to do. They are there 24/7 to help make a plan of, should I be doing more? Am I doing enough? Am I missing anything? What can I be telling? Call them with that person, right? How I said sometimes they need that braveness. Hey, we're calling together. I'm here with my buddy and they're struggling. We don't know what we're supposed to do. Are we doing all the things? What else should we be doing? What are we missing? And that's probably more beneficial than saying you need to call 988 and letting them go, right? Than like, nope, we're doing it. You can practice 988. They encourage it in our area. Call it. Call it with your family. Call it with your crew. Put it on speakerphone. Get through the little recorded message. The counselors will answer, say, hey, learned about this. I want to make sure that all my people are comfortable with how this all works, that this isn't like get through that barrier of I don't know. Talk to the counselor for as long as you need and ask all of your questions. They have all, and they get classrooms and they tell me, they're like, we've been getting a lot of classrooms. I'm like, I've been in the classroom a lot. And so they have full classrooms, call them school classrooms, call them just to make sure that their students understand what it's like when they call. And so do that. They can translate into like 240 languages with AI, so that's not a barrier either. If they're all busy, you'll get connected to national lines. You can call, you can text, you can go online and mobile message. But if you're ever like, I'm alone or I don't know what to do, call, okay? Don't put yourself in that position. Don't let somebody else. There are some other resources. Obviously, 911 can be life-saving if we don't know too. In general, like people worry if I call 988, are they just going to call the police? Actually, and especially in our area, you're more likely to call 911 and have them send you to 988 than the opposite, because that's what 988 is there, is for mental health and to de-escalate. And so you're more likely to go the other way. They very rarely have to call emergency services, only if somebody's life is an imminent threat. Also make sure that we are connecting to professional care. That means telling your people over and over and over and over about what they have, making them try them out, right? Pushing them past that barrier of unknowns. There are those extra resources on your table for hard hats. Courage. If you are in a situation where there has been a loss in your team or you know somebody on your team that has had a loss, they do need special supports, okay? Post-vention grief is really important. There are some more resources there. Make sure that you're acknowledging your feelings, taking care of you. If we are modeling that, again, our supervisors, our directors are showing that it's okay to be human and have feelings and to struggle and to need help, then our workers will more likely have that too. Now, I really appreciate you letting me talk to you. If you do have any feedback for me, you can scan that with your phone. We do actually take those and implement feedback. They don't tie back to you, but like, hey, I wish you would talk more about this. Hey, this was good, or hey, that slide, I couldn't read this, or anything like that. Just let us know. But please take care of you. Again, you can't take care of somebody else if you're not taking care of you, and you deserve to feel good. It is not natural to be unhappy. There's this feeling like as I get older, it's just natural to not be unhappy and to not be okay. No. Be okay, and if you're not, make sure that you are connecting, because we all deserve to feel okay. And please take care of you.
Thank you.
Alicia, thank you. Does anybody have any questions or? No? All right. Remember your survey. Remember to register early for the conference. You know you're going to be able to make it. And enjoy this nice weather that we're having. Here it's going to change soon. So looking at the clock, we're lucky every day.